I'm originally from England, and I'm going to be a bit vague with this, but I was born and raised in Essex. When I hit my adult years, I was given the opportunity to come over to the US to further my education, and I took it. A long story short, I ended up getting married and have lived in the Chicago area ever since. I think that's enough backstory to really explain who I am and why things were going on when this glitch took place. A few years ago, I decided that I wanted to take some time off and fly back overseas to visit my parents. It had been a while since I'd seen my hometown, and I figured that it would be a nice way to spend a couple weeks in the summer. Unfortunately, my husband couldn't take the time off from work, and we decided that we didn't want to take our 6-year-old son on the airplane to another country. But he was able to at least take the days off to take me to the airport and pick me up when I returned. On the day that I was supposed to leave, we ended up waking up late because our alarm seemingly didn't go off, and I was freaking out about possibly missing my flight. I remember that whole morning was chaotic, and I felt like I was going crazy. Thankfully, I had already taken the time to pack and get my luggage in the car that night, so we didn't lose too much time. But I remember I was feeling like I was in a major panic the entire time. I remember checking my ticket, checking the departure times, and I recall that I had around an hour and a half at most to get there and get through everything. Honestly, I was fairly upset. We had both set up several alarms to make sure that I got up on time and that I didn't miss the flight. When we got to the airport, I remember him parking and getting my son out so that we could say goodbye before I actually went through security. But something felt really off. Again, I know that's vague, but I'll explain it the best that I can. The minute that I walked through the doors of the airport, the air felt heavier, and the overall mood felt solemn. It almost felt like time slowed down and like everyone that walked by was staring at me as they passed. I know that sounds really weird, but it's honestly the best way that I can explain what it was. Something changed as soon as I walked in those doors, and I have no idea what it was or why it happened. Anyways, I get my luggage checked and everything all taken care of, and I'm rushing through the process so that I can get through security as quickly as possible. I'm making a quick walk back toward the gate, and my husband and son are trying to keep up. And when he asked why I'm rushing so much, I just kind of stared at him. Did he not remember how much we were panicking this morning just to get out of the door and get here? I told him that we were running late and that I needed to get through security ASAP. To which he looked at his wrist, then back at me, and dropped the bombshell that confused the hell out of me. He stares at me confused and then says that my flight doesn't leave for around 3 hours. I was shocked by him saying this. I had an hour and a half left when we left. Had he just remembered the time wrong? I ask what he's talking about, and I pull up my ticket to look at the departure time. And he is right. 2 hours and 43 minutes before my flight. I ask him how that was possible. We woke up late, and I asked why we were freaking out so much to leave the house if we had that much time left to go. He again stares at me, confused, and explains that we woke up on time. He completely disregards my statement and tells me that the entire morning has been a smooth ride and that everything has gone as it was supposed to. I mentioned the alarm's not going off, and he says that the alarm went off and that he woke me up that morning. He then tells me that he noticed about halfway here that I was looking upset, and he kind of just chuckled and asked if it was because I thought I was late. I told him no, and I moved on, I honestly was done trying to explain it. I have no idea what the hell happened when I walked through those doors. But it was as if my entire morning had been reset to how it was supposed to be. We weren't late, there was no panic, and we had woken up on time to the alarms. I distinctly remember all of this though. There's no doubt in my mind that my version of events happened. I just don't think they happened in whatever timeline that I shifted to.
Time just glitched out on me. This just happened earlier today. I was driving to work at around 6:45 a.m. The sun wasn't up yet, but it was glowing behind the mountains. Traffic was heavy that morning, and I was cursing at myself for not leaving a little bit earlier. I had snoozed my alarm twice since I felt a bit tired from going to bed late the night before. One important note, I was wide awake when this happened, so it can't be chalked up to hallucinations or being sleepy. Also, no history of medication, drugs, or anything else that would alter my mental state. All right, on to the glitch. The road I was on had a section of trees ahead where it curved and turned twice. I made sure to keep my distance from the car ahead of me, since people didn't often brake for the first turn until they were right on top of it. Anyway, I looked down at the clock to see what time it was. I stared down at it for a second because the clock was off by 2 whole hours. It said it was 4:50 in the morning. Oh well, just something wrong with the clock, I thought. I'd need to fix it later. But when my eyes came back up to the road, I noticed it was pitch black outside. The sun was no longer glowing behind the mountains. Damn near looked like midnight out on that country highway. I looked around in utter confusion. The vehicles ahead of me were gone now, nowhere to be seen. I came up to the turn in the road, swung around it and the upcoming bend and got clear of the tree line. Still no sign of the sun or traffic. I was bewildered. I'd be way too early for work now, so I glanced down at the clock again and what do you know? The time had changed. 6:55. I again spent a good second eyeballing the clock in total shock. Because of this, I had to hit my brakes to avoid a collision with the vehicles in front of me, the same one I had been following earlier. The sun had returned as well, glowing behind the mountains. I've been thinking about it all morning at work. What the hell happened? Did I glitch back in time 2 whole hours?
So, this may seem a bit lame when it comes to glitch stories, but to me, it's really strange. Some backstory that may or may not seem really all that relevant. I'm 27 years old and I work in computer network systems. When I was in high school, I took all the computer classes that I could in order to get myself in a position that I would be comfortable working with computers and such on a daily basis. And I didn't really expect to go into network systems, but I found my niche and I'm comfortable in what I do now. And I make decent money. And while my actual dream was to become a software developer, I'm fairly happy with my life as it is. I even took a year of intro to programming when I was in high school. It was basically a primer with all the overall structure of programming, how to properly write code, and even some projects using Python. It was a super basic class, but I had a good time in it, and I had learned a few things over the year that I had the class. Honestly, it was one of my favorite classes, mostly because the teacher was a super funny guy and he was all about making the class and learning the concepts fun. I remember that we actually had a few projects. One, where we had to write pseudocode to program a robot to do our homework. There was a group project where we had to actually do a full stack mock-up. That's everything from the front to the back end, by the way. So, user interface to background code. I promise you that all of this is important. There's a reason that I'm mentioning these. Fast forward to this last year, in 2020, and my brother landed a job as a back-end software developer. Basically, he writes the code that works on the actual back end of the system. He's a year younger than me, and he's always kind of followed in my footsteps, up to and including my interest in IT and coding. Unfortunately, my love for coding stopped after high school. It may have been one of my favorite classes, but I wasn't any good at it, and I tried my damn best to get the hang of it. And that said, he took to it super quick. He learned the ins and outs of coding, and he was beyond proud to have landed this gig. So, all this out of the way, here's where the weirdness actually starts to kick in. When my brother told me that he got the software development job, I was ecstatic. I told him congrats, and we had some excited idle chit-chat. Then, I made a quick joke about how he better be careful, or else I would ask him to get me a job with him. He laughed and responded with, "You never liked programming. You wouldn't want to do this job." I then reminded him that I took a programming class in high school because I wanted to be a software developer. And his humored laugh turned into a confused stare. He then tells me that I never took a programming class, and that if I had, he would remember it. I then told him that it was Mr. Smith's programming class, and that I learned the basics, and then we also learned some Python. He then tells me straight that Mr. Smith never taught a programming class, and that I never took fundamentals of coding class. We bantered back and forth for a few minutes, and I bet him dinner that I would get my transcripts and prove to him that I did take his class. He took me up on it. I went upstairs into my office and pulled my education documents out of the drawer of my desk, which is basically just my degrees and transcripts in case I ever needed them. I sort through them until I get to my high school transcript, and I start going over the years. I go over them once, and I don't see a programming class. I start thinking about it, and I figured it must have been my junior year based on how long I had left. And I remembered that a buddy of mine took the class with me, and he was a year ahead of me. So it would have had to have been before senior year. I combed over the classes, and according to my new transcript, I never took a coding class with Mr. Smith. This class that I distinctly remember taking, that I remember all the projects, the basics, and the topics that we went over. It never existed, and I never learned anything about any of it. What's really confusing to me, in junior year, there's now a class that I took that I don't remember. Introduction to Photography and Videography, something that I have absolutely zero interest in, yet I apparently took it for a year. Even more interesting, this class was instructed based on the documentation by a David Smith, the Mr. Smith that I remember teaching the programming class. I somehow ended up in a timeline where my education changed, and I apparently never learned something that I remembered learning. I know that one possibility is that my official transcript is incorrect. I just don't think that's the case, honestly. These are official documents, and I've had them for 8 years. I feel like I would have noticed that there was an incorrect class on the document when I submitted them for my college application, or when I graduated and got them. And in the end, I guess I'm just crazy, and I remember stuff that I never learned. And unfortunately, I'm still no good at it. Oh, and I had to buy my brother Chipotle. It was his choice. The other day, The strangest thing happened to me while I was driving my daughter to her grandmother's house so she could watch her while I went to work. It was pretty early in the morning, and my little girl was asleep in the passenger seat while we drove the back roads. I had the windows down, and I was just enjoying the light summer breeze. Side note, has anyone else fallen in love with driving in their city without people on the streets? One of the positive side effects of the quarantine. Anyways, we've been driving for a little while, and we're most the way there when this jack-off of a kid shows up out of nowhere behind me in what I specifically remember as a blue Toyota. He's tailgating super close and keeps having to slam his brakes every single time that I slow down to stop. For several minutes, I'm just sitting there and watching this kid practice his rap career while damn near smashing into my ass over and over again. I remember he had a mostly shaved head, sunglasses on, and had a bandana around his neck that I'm assuming he was using as a facial covering. I also specifically remember that he had somewhere close to a dozen or 2 dozen of those little tree air fresheners around his rearview mirror. This all continues, his early morning rapping, tailgating, and me watching him lurch forward every single time that I stop at a stop sign. This goes on for several minutes. And after a while, we get to what is the only real busy intersection on the trip to my mother's house. As I'm pulling up, I notice the light shifted to yellow, and while I probably had enough time to make it, I decided to go ahead and stop solely to inconvenience the idiot that had been on my ass for the last few roads. Yes, I know this was stupid, and yes, I know this was an aggressive driving maneuver and could have ended badly for me, and could have resulted in injuries if he had been going fast enough. Sometimes, anger and emotion makes us do dumb things. I'll say this was one of my dumb things. Honestly, I wasn't going more than 20 anyways, and I didn't slam my brakes. Simply came to a stop. So still stupid, but that's my defense. So I stop, and I'm thinking that this kid is either going to slam his brakes or owe me a new car. But to my surprise, he does neither, and goes over into the oncoming lane to gun past me and run the now red light. I specifically remember his blue Toyota passing me and heading into the intersection. I specifically remember a car that was starting into the intersection on one of the perpendicular streets honking. And I remember looking down at my daughter and the horn waking her up. I remember everything down to thinking that my poor 6-year-old girl was about to witness a potentially fatal car crash because this guy decided to be an idiot and I decided to stop on a yellow. But after a moment, there was no crashing noise and I looked back up the road. The couple cars were going through the intersection as normal, and there was no crash. My first thought was, oh man, good thing they were able to stop on time. But then, I looked up and couldn't believe what I saw. The kid in the blue Toyota rapping to his steering wheel was still behind me, 50 air fresheners and all. I stared at him for several moments in the mirror, and he must have realized that I was staring because he motioned at me like, "Can I help you?" And I looked back at the road, back toward the moving traffic, and then to my daughter. She was definitely wide awake, and when I asked her what woke her up, she just said she didn't know. I asked her if she heard a car honking and she said no. Honestly, I don't know what the hell I experienced, but part of me feels like I saw some altered timeline where he decides to pass me and run it. But then, I was pushed back into our timeline, or something. Honestly, it was just crazy, and I'm glad that what I thought happened wasn't what really happened. So there's an episode that happened some time ago, and it still makes me confused. I have an orange cat. He's always searching for little insects to poke his paw with, or running around the house all the time. So, one day, he went missing for a few hours, but that didn't bother me much at first. But later on, the hours kept going, and I would see no sight of him. At that point, that really got me concerned. I searched for him everywhere in my house. Mind you, that my house is very small, and my backyard as well, and all the doors that goes out were all locked, windows also closed. I searched first in my bedroom where he stays a lot. Nothing under the beds or under the blankets. Just nothing anywhere. Okay, so I closed the bedroom door again. I searched the backyard, nothing. The bathroom, nothing. The kitchen, also nothing, and he wasn't anywhere. I checked my drawers, wardrobes, anything possible, and still nothing. So, I was really convinced that I had lost him. Maybe he decided to escape. But suddenly, I hear his meowings, and they're coming from the bedroom. And I immediately get to open the door, and there he was, the little bastard. How the hell did he appear out of the blue in the bedroom when I searched every inch of it and I did not see him anywhere? How is that possible? That makes me kind of believe that he teleported, but I won't make any assumptions about it. Also, his fur was very muddy, which was strange because I couldn't see him in the backyard as well. Do you guys have similar stories with your cats? Have you ever met someone new and it felt like you've known them your whole life? I'm not talking about this stupid romantic love at first sight bullshit either. Like, you met someone and they look familiar. You can guess things about them to the T, but you've never known them prior. I work for an insurance company. I'm the one who reviews the financial records for businesses to make sure they're paying for insurance premiums, workers' comp, and etc. Not a very exciting job, but I've also been doing it for years, so the pay is pretty good. So we hired a new person last year. I'll call her D. No big deal. People come and go, move up, leave, whatever. So I just thought that it would be a new person that would ask me a lot of questions at the beginning, talk to in passing, meetings, and so forth. However, when I met her, immediately she looked familiar. So I try to place her. Maybe I've seen her at a gym I go to, at a restaurant, or maybe she lives in the same apartment complex as me. But I don't think much of it, and I just go about my life. After a few days though, I get to talk to her more since I basically help with the job training, and some of her mannerisms and the way she talks is so familiar. So I finally broke down and I asked her where she used to work or live or gym membership. And to my surprise, she wasn't even from this state. She moved from Tennessee to here in South Dakota because of a job opportunity that her husband was offered. I've never been to Tennessee and she had never been here. So, okay, fine. She probably just looks like someone else or one of those deja vu moments. But it gets weirder from here. I start to think maybe I just feel like I know her because we get along so well, right? She's very polite, but also sly with her insults like you may not even catch it. And when she's on the phone and she lets one slide, she always looks at me with her cheesy grin like, "Did you catch that?" Which I find hilarious. I never really had one that I could do that with at work, in fear of people taking it the wrong way. So I always had to just hold it in and share it with my husband when I get home. She's very intelligent. She went to a local community college for business, but she was super knowledgeable about health or biology, whatever you want to call it. The reason this is important is because I happened to call her out about it accidentally. I mentioned I was having issues with heartburn at some point, and I just figured it was because of the coffee I drink in the morning, or maybe what I had for dinner the night before. But she mentioned that I should go to the doctors about it, as it may be more serious. It didn't really occur to me that it could be something worse. But I'm a smoker, so I figured it wouldn't hurt, right? Surprisingly, an insurance company has great insurance too, so I went and come to find out that I have GERD. This actually helped a lot to have an answer and ways to help manage it, and it also got me to quit smoking. Anyways, I brought this up to her and thanked her for it, but I happened to make a comment how it was weird that she knew, and we both said at the same time, Your mom's a nurse. And we both paused and she asked, "Did I already tell you that?" But she didn't. I just shrugged and said, "Good guess." I moved on, but I seriously have no idea how I guessed her mom was a nurse. The things I happened to know about her before she told me started becoming overwhelming. It became a running joke between us that I must have looked her up before she was hired. I guessed that she had an older and younger brother, or that she was a middle child. I guess she liked painting and biking. I even guessed that she was in a bad accident as a teenager, and she made me guess where her scar was. I guessed on her right leg, but it was actually her left leg. The reason I guessed right leg, though, was because I was in a bad accident as a teenager and I had a scar on my right leg. Which also leads to the oddity of this. The reason that I was able to guess all of this, I feel, was because it was so similar to my life. I was the middle child, older sister, younger brother, and I love painting, even though she's way better at it than me. My mother was a vet though, but still some kind of doctor, right? I even moved here from North Dakota for my business or accounting degree, and I met my husband here, so we stayed. We shared other similarities and even looked similar. Long, curly, light brown hair, hazel eyes, and similar build. Even our husbands look similar. Our views and opinions are even dead on similar. We've become so close, I even went with her to Tennessee when her mother had an emergency and was in the hospital for a week. Again, I had never been to that place, but it felt so similar. When we went to the hospital, I seemed to know exactly where to enter and what floor to go to before we even saw the map and set up. How would I have known any of this? Obviously, because of this, it has led us to become incredible friends. Sure, it's cheesy, but we can even finish each other's thoughts and sentences like it's nothing. We hang out constantly, and the four of us are usually together every weekend. We even tried to find an apartment close to each other so that we could ride to work together. I am incredibly lucky to have met someone like this, but then I can't help but wonder, were we supposed to be the same person? Were we supposed to be in different timelines and something cross? Is that why I seem to know all of these things about her? I've talked to her about this, and she finds it intriguing, but had no knowledge on my past and couldn't guess any of it. Did I do something at some point that caused a glitch or a parallel universe of some sort to merge? And here are the top comments from my last video. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.